Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the November meeting of the Montgomery County Civic Federation. My name is Alan Bowser. I'm the president for the 2021-2022 membership year. Thank you all for joining us on this Monday evening. I'd like to do is start by going through the people on the call so you can introduce yourselves and say where you live. That'll help everybody get an idea of what we're talking about when we address the issues later in the program. So I'll read the names off of my screen. May not be in the same order as your screen, but Dick Caffinger.
You will have to unmute before each time.
Everybody will have to unmute before you. There you go, Dick.
Yes. You got great. Dick Coffinger, the Lay Hill area of the county. That's somewhere between Wheaton and Olney.
Thank you. Justin and Laurel.
Hi, I'm Laurel McKnight. I live in Silver Spring close to the intersection of Wayne and Dale.
Oh, our neighbor. Thank you very much. Luella, Mass.
I'm whatever, just a person, I guess. I'm not, not in a civic group. So I'm a longtime association member.
And where do you live? And where do you live?
Oh, where do I live? Well, I don't remember anymore. It's been my daughter's on our street, so it's been a hellish month. I live in Colesville, which is just north of the intersection. It's actually the intersection of Randolph and New Hampshire Avenue is about the center of our town,
Okay,
close in the East County.
That's good to know.
My name is Upneat Atwell, Senior Aide to Council President Tom Hucker. I'm also a resident of downtown Silver Spring, but I've lived in several other parts of Montgomery County throughout my life.
Thank you for joining us. Nancy Mason.
It's actually Bob Nelson from Goshen.
Hey, Bob Nelson.
It's here.
Okay, Gary Lamar.
Carrie Lamare, I live off in the Norbeck community.
Thank you. Jackie Boko.
Hi, I'm Jackie Boko. I'm with the Northwood Four Corners Civic Association in Silver Spring. And I'm also do the website and newsletter for the Civic Federation. I'm co-hosting tonight, so I'll be muting and you if you get noisy.
Kathleen Sammy.
The county department.
It's Kathleen Sammy. Sorry, I don't have video tonight. I'm at Silver Spring at very close to the intersection of Dale Drive and Colesville Road. But I've also lived all over the county because have a big family and I'm born in the county. So that's it.
Nice to hear you, Kathleen, if we can't see you.
Yeah.
Mary? Hey, Rosemary.
I'm Rosemary Ingman, Rosie Ingman. I live
No,
in
not you,
Roosevelt.
Rosie. Not you. No, this is
Sorry.
Rosemary R. Cohen, and she's.
Hi,
Great.
yes, I'm here. I live in Goshen. I used to live ages ago in Silver Spring, Tacoma Park, but I've been in Goshen since August of '78.
Okay, thank you. Nice to see you. Bailey Condrey.
Hey, so Bailey Condrey, I'm with the Parkwood Residents Association, and I'm a former president of the Civic Fed.
Nancy Mills.
Yes, Nancy Mills. I live in Chelsea Heights, which is in walking distance of downtown Silver Spring.
Another neighbor. Hi, Nancy.
Mhm.
Lauren Brown.
Hi, I'm a delegate from Conservation Montgomery, and I live in Chevy Chase, Maryland.
Thank you, Lauren. Nice to see
Nice to see you too.
you. Pete Salinger.
Hi, I live in Bethesda in the Springfield subdivision, just off River. Welcome.
Okay, Pat Tyson.
Hi, I am from Lytonsville. I was trying to get Charlotte on too, but I wasn't successful. That's why I'm late. I'm sorry.
She called me earlier. She wasn't going to participate. Kira.
Hi, I'm Kira Looters. I am from Parkwood, which is partly in Kensington and partly in Bethesda.
Okay. Joyce?
Joyce Quads. I'm from the Edgemore Citizens Association, and Edgemore is a neighborhood that borders the downtown Bethesda area.
Gary Klauber?
I live around a couple of corners from Allen at the intersection of Bonifant and Dale, a very short block from a Purple Line station, which will open in some number of decades.
Sandy Robinson?
Hello.
We're introducing ourselves. Where do you live?
I'm sorry. I live in Leisure World. Thank you.
Okay, that's good. Daniel Caroma?
Hello, everyone. Daniel Caroma. Actually, the Daniel Caroma. I live in White Oak, and thank you for having me here today.
Sure. Let's see. My screen has moved around. Max Bronstein. Hey, Max, you're going to introduce yourself? How about Teresa at the Kenwood Condo?
Hi, everyone. Teresa Sparklin. I am the new community affairs liaison for the Kenwood Condo, replacing Sue Schumacher, who has stepped down. So this is my first meeting, so I'm interested to get involved with the Civic Federation.
Thank you. Please extend our regards to Sue.
Will do.
Paul Jarosinski.
Paul Jarosinski, president of the Cherrywood Homeowners Association in Albany, Maryland.
Julia Barlow.
Yeah, Julia Barlow. I live in Silver Spring in the Indian Springs neighborhood.
Chris Meyer.
Hi, this is Chris. I'm in Silver Spring by Wayne and Sligo.
Another neighbor. Nice to see you, Chris, or hear you. Chris Reynolds.
Hey, another neighbor. We got a nearby takeover here. I'm Chris Reynolds, president of the Sawika Neighborhood Association. I live near Colesville Road and Sligo Creek.
Thank you. Rosie Ingman. There you go, Rosie.
Yeah, I'm Rosie Eggman at Leisure World.
Thank you, Rosie.
Yeah.
Nice to hear your voice. See you tomorrow. Eileen Finnegan, who posted that she lives in Hillendale, New Hampshire, at the Beltway. No mic, no camera tonight. Okay. Colin Warren. We'll just do a couple more of these because I'm losing track as my screen keeps shifting. Colin Warren.
Hello, I'm a resident of Chevy Chase, living near Norwood Park.
Okay, Kelly, you're going to introduce yourself when you unmute.
Yes. Hello, good evening. I'm Kelly McCullough. I live in Silver Spring.
Another neighbor of mine. Thank you so much. And Cynthia Green, did we ask you?
Here we go. Hi, I'm Cynthia Green. I live in Bethesda and I represent the Springfield Civic Association.
Well, thank you, everybody, for introducing yourselves. We've got a good representation of people throughout the county. If I missed your name, my apologies. Joan Bierweiler. Go ahead, Joan.
I'm Joan Bierweiler from Aspen Hill.
Thank you, Joan. It's good to see you.
And there's also a Joan King from Eastern Village Co-housing Community in South Silver Spring. We're on Eastern Avenue. And I used to go to these meetings regularly, and it's very nice to be back. It's been a few years. It's when, I can't think of his name, of course. But anyway, I'm glad to be back. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ellen Martin from Chevy Chase West. You didn't call on me, but I'm happy to be participating tonight.
Sorry, Ellen. And Karen Cordry.
And Buddy. They're both here. And he's kissing me too, yes. I'm president of the Kensington Heights Civic Association, which surrounds the Wheaton Mall on the west and south side. And I'm also recording secretary for Civic Fed.
And another Alan Myers, president of the Maplewood Citizens Association. We are between Rockville Pike and Old Georgetown Road, West Cedar Lane, and the Capitol Beltway.
Thank you, everybody. Don't be shy. And then we've got our guests, Wade Holland and Chris Conklin, who will introduce.
I'm Jerry Garson. I'm the treasurer of the Montgomery County Civic Federation. We appreciate any dues you send. I'm also the transportation chairman. I'll be hosting tonight's meeting. I live in Potomac, Maryland, not too far from 270.
Pete Levitas.
Hi, I'm Pete Levitas. I live on Chevy Chase Boulevard, just a few yards from Wisconsin Avenue. Nice to be here. Thanks.
And Jean, did I introduce you? Did I call on you, Jean?
No.
Go ahead, Jean.
Jean Kavanaugh. I'm also from Seven Oaks, Evanswood, and I'm coordinating the revival of our Traffic and Pedestrian Safety Committee, and there are a few members here on the call tonight. I live at Colesville and Sligo Creek Parkway. Very close to Chris.
Well, thank you very much. We've got people who are joining. Max, say hello. I did see you, Max, with your baseball hat on, with your football hat on. But you'd have to unmute, Max.
This is Mike Milton. I'm in Silver Spring in the Woodside Forest area, pretty close to Colesville and Sligo Creek also.
Thank you, Michael. And then Max Bronstein is on the call too. Well, let's get to business. And we've got exciting presentations this evening. So the first thing we need to do is we need to approve the meeting agenda, which was printed on page 2 of the newsletter. Is there a motion to approve the agenda for this evening?
So moved.
Is it seconded?
I second.
Yes.
All right, then all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposing, abstentions? The meeting agenda is adopted. Next thing to do is to approve the minutes of the October 11th, 2021 meeting. And that was printed on page 26 of the November newsletter. So a motion to approve the minutes from the October 11th meeting.
So moved.
Second,
I second.
all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposing? Abstentions? The minutes are approved. Next thing is the treasurer's report. Jerry Garson.
We've been doing fairly good since we don't have to pay for our meetings in the executive office building. In the last 30 days, we've gotten $80 of dues in. And since July 1st, we've gotten $914 of dues in. And our expenses have only been $400. So we have a net income of $514. Our current bank balance is $9,593. If anyone has any questions, let me know.
Thank you very much, Jerry. This is the time when we ask people if they have any announcements they want to make to the group. I have a long list here, but if anybody has anything they want to raise for the good of the order, they can do that now. Let me go through my list. First of all, I want to thank the Montgomery County Taxpayers League for their extensive letter that they drafted expressing their views about Thrive 2050. That was sent on to the county. Lots of civic organizations and individuals signed on to that. So thanks to the Taxpayer League and Ed Almanetti. The next thing I want to mention that we need to change the topic for our December meeting. We're originally going to have state legislators present, but that's the same night as their budget priorities hearings. So we'll be looking for a new topic and we will let you know directly. As noted in our newsletter, we're looking for committee chairs. We have lots of committees. All of them need chairs and co-chairs. So please check with your associations and see if anybody wants to be the chair of the Environment Committee, the Public Finance Committee, the Education Committee, the Public Safety Committee, Land Use and Planning. We are in desperate need of more help to do this work. It's a countywide organization and it's devolved down to a very few people. Most of you know that the Planning Department, the Montgomery County Planning Department, keeps a list of civic association, homeowners associations on their website. They're looking for us to update that information with your officers, your telephone numbers, email addresses, things like that. So please go to the Planning Department's website and you'll be able to see colleagues from all across the county and with information on how to contact them. And it's got a nice little game where you can select a certain area and you can produce a mailing list. So that's a very nice thing. We're looking for people to staff our Nominations and Awards Committee for June 2022 when we have new officers and we give out Civic Federation awards. A Thanksgiving parade for the county is Saturday, November 20th. The Civic Federation is going to have a vehicle in the parade. If anybody wants to ride in the vehicle, if anybody wants to march behind the vehicle, we would appreciate it. And we're starting this in 2021 to give more, to raise the profile of the Civic Federation. November 11th is Veterans Day, 11th hour of the 11th day. There are going to be veterans observances all around the county. I'm asking those of you who are nearby to go to the one that's in Wheaton. It's at the Veterans Plaza off of Reedy Road, George Avenue. Chris Van Hollen is going to be the guest speaker. The weather looks like it's going to be nice. We don't usually see a big turnout of non-veterans at veterans observances, and they obviously have made incredible sacrifices on our behalf, and it's good to go and say thank you. They serve, there's soft drinks, beer, wine, and free food after these things. So 11th hour of the 11th day in Wheaton. Last but not least, keep your eyes peeled for the public hearing from the County Council on the redistricting issue. As you know, they've come up with 7 districts now. There's some controversy about whether or not some communities have been split, why Leisure World is in the East County one as opposed to the one that's slightly to the west. Lots of issues about that. Please stay tuned for that. Anybody else have any other announcements? Okay, not hearing any other announcements. We'll move on to this evening's program, and I'll turn it over to Jerry Garson.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Jerry Garson. I'm the chairman of the Transportation Committee, and every year we try to have a transportation meeting. Spoken to the officer because there's a road show this coming Thursday in Montgomery County, and there's one day in Prince George's County. He could not make it, but would like to attend the latest session. The most important thing in transportation occurred last Friday night when the House of Representatives passed the bipartisan infrastructure bill, which should provide Maryland with an extra $300 million a year for the next 6 years, which basically puts us up to $1.2 billion per year of money from the federal government. The county is proposing free ride-on service through June 30th, 2020, partly due to the pandemic and the after impacts of that. The traffic plan that is currently funded with $111 million of state funds has made improvements in I-270 corridor. Additional lane segments have been made on the I-270 western spur from Democracy Boulevard all the way to onto 270 just north of Maryland 28th. The Maryland has changed the name of what was formerly the P3 to Op Lanes Maryland, which is its new name. This is to design, build, finance, operate, and maintain improvements on both I-495 west of the I-270 spur and I-270 initially up to I-3. There is a virtual public hearing sessions are part of the 45-day public comment period for this supplemented draft EIS statement. It's officially open until November 15th. If anyone would like to make any comments on it, they can look up the actual site of the Op Lanes Maryland, and you can actually provide testimony in either writing or by phone. We have seen that there are problems with the WMATA and the building the train stations at Twinbrook, north of Twinbrook, which is basically at Rockville and Shady Grove. I like to say that Chris Conklin has no authority over WMATA, so he's not responsible for this. New contractors have also been picked to restart the Purple Line, and there's been numerous articles online about it. And the current deadline, which is supposed to be March of 2022, is now been pushed back most likely to March of 2026. That's another 4-year delay. I'd like to now introduce Chris Conklin, who's the director of the Montgomery County Department of Transportation, who's been doing a wonderful job over the last 4 years. If there are any potholes, if you don't report them, Chris Conklin and his team can't fix them. Without any further things, let me have Chris Conklin speak.
Thanks for the introduction, Jerry. And I know you have a couple speakers for tonight, so I'll be relatively brief in my comments. First, I'm going to focus on what's going on for the department as a whole. We have kind of refocused our activities strategically around 3 main initiatives. One is Safety and Vision Zero, and you'll be hearing from Wade Holland later tonight about his management of the Vision Zero program. The other is Climate and Resiliency. And if you're familiar with Adriana Hochberg, she is the county's climate change leader and has been the shepherd of the climate plan for Montgomery County. Our focus in this is really in 2 areas, actually 3. One is the electrification of the automobile and light vehicle fleet that move around the county, and that will have a significant impact on the amount of greenhouse gas emissions from transportation in Montgomery County. As we stand today, the transportation sector is responsible for about 40% of the overall greenhouse gas emissions in the county, and the vast majority of that is from the operation of private vehicles. So we are working hard to try to encourage the adoption of electric vehicles when people are replacing their own personal vehicle, and have there's a couple initiatives related to that that are worth mentioning tonight. One is the expansion of electric vehicle charging within county parking facilities. You're probably familiar that MCDOT operates about 26,000 parking spaces in the county, and we have electric vehicle charging throughout that network. We are working with Pepco to expand the number of charging opportunities in those facilities, and excuse me, and to make the locations of those more evident to people, so that if you were on the fence about whether an electric vehicle works for you, you might have more confidence that you know where to charge that vehicle. Another initiative that we've worked on with the Department of Permitting Services is to allow the installation of private EV charging within the county right-of-way, so that if you are in a home where you don't have a driveway, or not obviously not in an apartment community, but you have a house with no driveway, you can apply for a permit to install an electric vehicle charging station within the right-of-way, so that you can charge your vehicle at home. It does not assign the parking space to you. Excuse me, so somebody else might be in your way, but that does give you the opportunity if you are in a street that doesn't have oversubscribed on-street parking. The third element of this is a group buy program, where we've been trying to develop essentially a co-op model to purchase EVs at a lower cost than you would be able to buy through your own negotiating with a dealer for an electric vehicle. So that's one prong of this. The other prong is encouraging the use of more transit. And I think I've spoke about this with this group before. There are different ways that we're trying to go about that. One of that is to optimize the transit services that we currently have and that are operating on our roads. And just a few days ago, on November 1st, we closed the public comment period on the Reimagine Ride-On study, which is the first comprehensive reassessment of the bus transit network in Montgomery County in quite a long time. And as part of that, we'll be looking at all of the ride-on routes, their frequencies, their routing, the span of service, how many hours a day they operate. And we will also be working closely with WMATA to evaluate all of the WMATA services in the county. So we expect to see some relatively significant proposals to rearrange the way transit is provided in Montgomery County on all of those local services. A second element of that is some of the projects that Jerry spoke about, the investment in fixed guideway transportation. By that, I mean getting the WMATA system to be available and more reliable to our residents. It's clearly been a period of some significant setbacks to that agenda over the last few weeks with these 7 Series railcar issues and the delays to the station enhancements in Rockville. But in the long term, WMATA will be a significant part of the transportation network we need to serve the needs of our residents. Coupled with that is the Purple Line. We're happy to hear that the state has selected a new design build contractor to advance that project. Jerry mentioned some of this, but we expect that contract to be finalized sometime late this year, assuming the state and that contractor can successfully negotiate the terms of that agreement and bring it before the Board of Public Works. That it does result in a significant delay to the delivery of that project. But without this step, the delivery of that project would be unknown. So that's a good set of events for the county, given that we've already committed to move that project forward and construction had started. So there's really no turning back at this point. Getting the project done, and in our view, is the best outcome now, and minimum delays are the best way to get it done. So we're hopeful that all of those things get this project started and it can reach its conclusion. Also important to this is expansion of the high capacity transit network through the Bus Rapid Transit program. The flash service on US 29 started a little over a year ago. It did actually quite well under these pandemic conditions, carrying about 500,000 passengers in its first year of operation. Not what was projected by any stretch, but no transportation mode met projections in the last years, but we are happy with the number of people who've chosen to use Flash this year. We are continuing the design process on Maryland 586, the Veers Mill corridor. That project is the furthest along after Flash in our program. The next furthest along is the 355 BRT project from Clarksburg to Bethesda. We are in preliminary engineering for that project. And this year we are starting the planning process on 2 additional projects, the New Hampshire Avenue corridor between Colesville, and I heard some folks mention they were from Colesville, to the district line. And we are starting work on the North Bethesda Transitway, which runs from the Wheaton, not the Wheaton, I always say that, the Westfield Montgomery Mall to the White Flint Station. You should expect to see some information from us about forming citizens advisory committees and getting public engagement underway on those projects as we approach the winter months. The other project in the BRT program that corridor advisory committee meetings will start to occur on is the US 29 corridor. We had brought a recommendation for bus HOV lanes to the county council at the conclusion of the last fiscal year. So sometime, I believe in May of last year, they gave us some additional money at the request of the planning department and some other advocacy groups to look more closely at whether dedicated lanes for buses only might better serve the transit needs in that corridor. So that work is also getting underway this winter. So that's the story in transit. As I turn my attention to other components of our operation, many of you may be customers of the parking facilities that we operate that I mentioned earlier. Those obviously had a very difficult time during the pandemic. Their enterprise funds supported, at least before the pandemic, exclusively on the revenues from use of those facilities. The use of those facilities was dramatically impacted by work at home and the economic impact of stay-at-home orders and other health measures last year. I'm happy to say that it appears that parking activity is recovering. We are not yet back to a point of normal activity, normal revenue, but it does appear that they can be self-sufficient in the coming year. There is a lot of development interest in the parking lot districts. Those of you in the Bethesda and Chevy Chase area might have been following the Farm Women's Market redevelopment, which there's 2 parking lots on the back side of the Farm Women's Market on the east side of Wisconsin Avenue. We continue to work with a development partner, the town of Chevy Chase and the Parks Department, to bring forward a vision that has a shopping pavilion and restoration of the farm women's market, coupled with some residential development and creation of 2 large parks in that area. We continue to work with proposers on 2 additional parks further north in Bethesda, near West Virginia Avenue, for some additional parks / parking lot redevelopment projects. There are a number of interested parties in Silver Spring in redeveloping parcels near or adjacent to our parking facilities that we're involved with. I think one has a planning board meeting next week for the motel site that's kind of on Eastern Avenue, next to the Kennett Street Garage. There's some other activities elsewhere in Silver Spring. In Wheaton, in the last year, we opened the parking garage underneath the Wheaton office building, the planning department headquarters. So that was a big milestone, and that building is starting to get more occupied as the planning department returns to work in a workplace, returns to the office, I should say. And as the other county agencies that occupy that building return to the workplace in some fashion to do their work. In terms of highway, that was, I talked to you, I think last fall also. They restored their operations relatively quickly after the initial shutdown and have continued their paving and sidewalk and other programs all through this year, and will continue to do so next year. In terms of winter operations, you may have some interest in that. Snow and ice clearing. We are prepared to manage the winter conditions, but I must be completely forthright with this group. Much like all organizations that rely on commercial vehicle operations, we are having some struggles with filling our workforce needs. And given the relatively light winter seasons we've had over the last 3 or 4 years, the number of private contractors interested in snow services has dropped. So it will be more challenging this winter than it has been in winters past to meet snow and ice operations. I will largely not talk about our traffic engineering division and the work going on there because I want to leave that space for Wade Holland. That's the division that's most closely aligned with the Vision Zero initiative. And much of their work has been focused on safety, safe routes to schools, improving the crossing opportunities of our roads, and maintaining the signal system and other elements like that. In terms of the capital program, we've continued to advance major projects. Some of the things that are nearly reaching their conclusion, there should be an opening of the 355 crossing project this fall, which is the pedestrian tunnel under 355 between the National Institutes of Health and the Navy Med facility, and a new entrance to the metro station there. And there are a number of smaller pedestrian and bike projects that have reached their conclusion this year, principally in the White Flint and Silver Spring area. Also some bike facilities that will finish in the next few weeks in Bethesda. And other projects throughout the county. There's a lot of different projects that are in different phases of planning and design and construction. In White Flint, the Western Workaround, which is probably our largest road project in the portfolio, has advanced to a new stage of construction where the intersection of Executive Boulevard and Old Georgetown Road has reopened and to serve all directions of travel. The Grand Park Avenue connection between the Conference Center and Pike and Rose has opened, and they will be moving towards the next phase of construction there. That project's got about a year in construction before it's fully concluded. I think I touched on all of our divisions. I'm trying to think if I left anybody out, but I don't think I did. So with that, I'll turn it to the group for questions. I know this group always has a lot of questions, and I don't want to filibuster the conversation. So Jerry, I'll turn it back to you to manage or provide any questions you may have.
This is Jerry Garson. One of the important parts of your department, which I think you're responsible for, is tree management, which is responsible for the street tree preservation, maintenance, and pruning trees in the neighborhood. The department plants approximately 1,800 trees each year and within the public right of way by public request. Do you know what the current backlog is in having trees pruned?
I don't know off the top of my head. I will say that all of our backlogs in the tree operation are significant. They're multi-year backlogs. You know, when we were looking at lean funding times, not so much this year, but a few years leading up to this year, trees is one of the areas that has borne the brunt of recommended cut or an increase a number of tree program funding efforts this year. One, in response to the climate change program, and two, because the backlogs have grown so large and there are significant cost increases from the contractors that do this work. So Jerry, I'm sorry, I don't know the specifics of the backlog.
Okay, I understand. I mean, it's probably not your most important thing. Not as many people always in front of their house. They normally don't call on other trees having problems.
You could ask me a specific like that on most programs and I won't know the answer, but we're trying to get more resources into that program.
I'm going to ask you another question, which is somewhat bothersome to myself and probably the news media. Do you know when the link from Montgomery County to the traffic cameras you have, I think approximately 280 cameras or 240 cameras, but the link is broken. Do you know when they're going to fix the link so the traffic cameras will be available to the public, will be available to the morning program that you run on cable, Montgomery County Cable 6, and the ones that news media use for when there are traffic problems?
That's an interesting question. I didn't know such a link was broken. I was at our traffic operations center today, watching all of the traffic cameras.
Well, they were sent last week, and they were hopefully trying to get it to work again. One of the other problems is we've had a large number of cameras that have been broken for a long time, and 6 of the 18 cameras that Montgomery County Department of Transportation operates on I-270 and I-495 have been out for at least 6 months. I know I've reported them in the past to 311 and actually filled out complaints about them. And hopefully we can get them working, because that helps in response to accidents on 270 and 495, which you're not personally responsible for all the accidents that occur. Another question I have.
Jerry, there are other people who have questions, so I'm going to call on somebody else first, since you've asked several now. If you don't mind, Carrie Lamari, please ask your question.
How are you, Mr. Conklin?
Good evening. Great. How are you doing?
I'm good. I have one statement and one question. The statement is that the Civic Federation did a bus report for Ike Leggett a few years back. I'm hoping that I don't know, but I'm hoping that you included that in your Ride On reimagining program, because we basically used Houston, Texas as probably our model for that. And of course, we enhanced it a little bit. The second thing is dealing with Thrive Montgomery. I would like to know, I mean, given the fact that our buses for the last 3 decades has hovered around or less than 5% for commuter transportation of the commuting public. You know, and the recommendations in Thrive basically say no new roads, no road upgrades. Now there's been talk about whether that means roads above 2 lanes or whatever. I'm not really sure. I don't think they're even sure what that really means. But the master plan indicates that they want to take every new road and road project out of existing master plans that haven't been built, and they're going to rely exclusively on buses. I'd like to know what was the transportation, DOT's position, and how do I get a copy of the letter, if you wrote one, to the county council?
We did write one. It's in the record, the public hearing record for Thrive.
Any way we can get a copy of it?
We can certainly find a copy and provide it to you.
I'd appreciate that.
I mean, I don't personally, nor do I think the department supports the relatively vague recommendations that you reference about
There you
no
go.
roadway, no roadway improvements. Do I believe that we are going to build many significant new roads in this
Probably not.
county? I don't. I think that era of our county's development, for a variety of reasons, is largely behind us. But does that mean there's no road improvements? I don't think that's the case at all. There are some roads that are relatively important to meeting the county's transit goals and objectives. And I support generally the idea that transit can play a greater role in meeting our mobility needs. But I think you'll even hear the planning director acknowledge that use of cars are going to be an important part of our mobility formula for the foreseeable future. So no, I don't think we can neglect that mode of transportation nor leave that system completely as it is. A lot of our comments on the Thrive Plan are about specificity and being more clear in what the recommendations mean, as you suggested. I do believe transit carries more than 5% of our commute
It
trips.
doesn't actually.
Harry, that's it, please.
Okay.
But you know, it in certain areas, in certain corridors, it certainly makes a very big difference. The commute mode to Silver Spring is in the order of 50%. So it may not meet some trips or many trips in the in portions of the county, but it's very significant for the job centers in the county. But no, we don't think it's a one size all fits all mobility solution for the county going forward. I'm happy to locate our comment letter on Thrive and provide it.
Perhaps you could put that in the chat, when we move on to the next speaker. I want to
I won't find it while we're meeting. It'll be sometime
all
after.
right then. Paul Jarasinski, you're up. Can you unmute?
I'm here. Yes, Mr. Conklin, did you used to have an employee that worked for you by name of Josh Faust and somebody named Lindsey Bryant in charge of the maintenance of neighborhood streets?
Josh Faust was a communications aide to our Division of Highway Services.
So my question comes down to what do you do in neighborhood streets? I mean, when he spoke to the Civic Fed last, he talked about how grossly underfunded that section was. And they do these PCI scores on roads every year. How bad do they have to be before you're going to do something? We have large sections of our neighborhood that are rated by your group as very poor, yet they can't give us any idea when they're going to get around to doing something about it. Is any of this infrastructure money going to make up that deficit that's been 10 or 20 years in that department?
Well, the deficit has been longer than 10 or 20 years. And
I'd be polite.
Yeah, well, you don't have to be too polite. I mean, I recognize that that program doesn't get all the support it needs. There has been a concerted effort over the last 15 years or so to increase the amount of funding that goes into residential street rehab. Many times when there are bond funds, there's bond funds that are set aside each year to meet unexpected changes in project demands. Many times when those aren't used, they're allocated to residential street resurfacing. But the amount of funds needed to fully address all those needs is very, very significant and not affordable in the county's current revenue situation. So the way that project is organized is every 2 years, there's a comprehensive pavement condition assessment, and the dollars are programmed to the areas where you have the highest benefit for the dollar spent. So you cannot do very much reconstruction affordably. You can do more surface treatment effectively. So there's a mix of addressing the very worst streets with reconstruction, more significant repairs to the middle ground, and to preventative treatments on the streets that are not yet in bad condition and can extend their life significantly with less expensive treatment. So that's done every 2 years. And then when the work is actually programmed it's not 100% based on that analysis because there's economies of scale and mobilization by addressing whole neighborhoods at a time rather than individual pieces of road at a time. So the work is all assessed and then grouped and then scheduled to do neighborhoods that have a variety of needs within them. Will the infrastructure bill address some of these needs? Not directly, I don't think, and I'll tell you why. The infrastructure bill is really gauged on regional facilities and facilities that carry larger volumes of traffic. There has not been a federal role in neighborhood street maintenance traditionally, but if there are more dollars going into the arterial and state systems, there might be more county dollars freed up for investment and restoration of the lower classification roads. So it's going to be a long haul to address the infrastructure needs on these conditions, on these streets, but there is a lot of focus on addressing neighborhood street conditions in our program.
So when they get below 40, does that qualify them? Or, I mean, how bad does it have to be? We have roads at 28.
Yeah, Paul, there's no specific criteria, but clearly when they get to a point where they're well beyond their service life, like a pavement condition of 28, those would have some more priority in reconstruction. But the reconstruction dollars don't go very far. So we're trying to balance between capturing roads before they deteriorate to needing that level of restoration and addressing the lowest quartile of the roads in the county at any time.
Okay, Peggy Dennis.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Chris, thank you so much for sharing your time with us. I've got 2 points to bring up. The first is, I was elated to hear that our reimagining the ride-on system is going forward. I think it ought to include reimagining our entire public transit system, but that's beside the point. I was disappointed to find that the public comment period has closed already. I never heard anything about it. Could you ask your Office of Communications or Public Outreach to make sure that the Civic Federation is given advance notice on various different issues and the public comment periods that go with them so that we can get the words out to each other and to all our members?
Yes.
Second, thank you.
And Peggy, if you have comments, please send them anyway.
Thank you. I will do
Okay.
that.
We are going to an actual consultant scope with a fee for the work attached to it, so that if we get anything from you relatively soon, there's still some opportunity to incorporate that into the work. And there was a fair amount of publicity through press releases and Twitter and other avenues. I'm disappointed it didn't reach your ears or eyes, but we'll try to make sure that you're directly included in future activities like that.
Thank you.
And
And
to the other point, we do have an agreement with WMATA to look at all of their bus routes as part of this too. So it's not exclusively ride-on.
That's good to hear. My second point is I had a wonderful conversation with Brt Linkletter, your road tree guy, a
Yes.
couple of days ago, and came up with the suggestion that DOT start a companion program to the Adopt a Road program you already have, which is volunteers picking up trash. I'm a member of that, but I was saying to Brt that our road trees, many of them, are being swamped, smothered, and ultimately killed by invasive vines. And the Parks Department already has a program set up, their Weed Warrior program, to not just take out non-native invasives, but to get rid of the tree vine problem also. My suggestion was that DOT start a tree vine program with volunteers that shouldn't cost the county very much, but should in the long run help preserve the trees we already have in the public rights of way and protect other trees from being overwhelmed in the future. He thought it was a good idea. Can you give me your take on it?
it sounds like a very good idea. I think we, obviously with Adopt a Road, we have a model for resident or group adoption of these needs. I would be a little concerned about you and your friends climbing trees next to busy roads.
You don't climb them. You work at the bottom, cutting off the bottoms of the vines and pulling them away 2 feet back from the bottoms of the trees.
So I think if we could work out, how that could be done safely and with the right instructions so that there's no damage to the trees, et cetera, that sounds like a very positive idea and suggestion.
Thank you.
Alan Myers?
Thank you. Chris, I have a couple issues. One you brought to my attention, and I'll make a brief statement on it. I've been in a pedestrian tunnel now on the 355 by Naval Medical. It's open. A little disappointed that the only way in and out of there is by elevator, which would tend to discourage people from having to wait around for an elevator when you could just keep moving. The other question is I assume that the pedestrian crosswalk on 355 will be removed now that the underpass is there, and if so, when?
That's a good question. I don't know that the pedestrian crosswalk will actually be removed. Most of the time when you create these facilities, you need to maintain a safe crossing at the surface anyway, because people will continue to do that. This one's a little unusual with it being secured on one end. So I'll have to look at the plans to see if it's actually slated for removal.
Because you could resequence the light that's there and probably get more traffic through.
You certainly could, and there's not a lot of, quote, homegrown pedestrian demand other than to and from the metro and the bus facility there. So it might be possible if it's
the
not
tunnel in
there.
downtown Bethesda doesn't have a great crossing. So that's
Yeah.
that's my thought on that.
And I was fairly certain there were at least stairs at both ends of that walkway.
No, it's an elevator. At least that's how I stumbled on. And it's only one flight, up, down, up, down.
Yeah. But I'm fairly certain there are stairs. I'll be at that facility.
Okay,
on
if you
Wednesday.
find them, let me know, because I'll walk by there again and look around. The other issue is something that's near and dear to us in Maplewood and also several communities that belong to the Civic Federation. That's the residential permit parking program.
Yeah.
And the current contract. I mean, Scott has been very nice and responsive, but I think he's frustrated himself right now with the way this contractor behaves. I mean, we seem to be the poster boy for always getting the new contractor. We got the first contractor you have for the digital permit, and then we got the new contractor our permits were due for renewal. We're getting notices saying renew your permits, and we couldn't renew them. We couldn't go down to Bethesda and renew them. We couldn't do them online. The contractor I don't know what the request for proposals involved, but the contractor was totally flabbergasted and unprepared to do anything in terms of this. And even though it functions now, it doesn't function well. People can't log on. They have the problem with passwords. They get tickets when they have valid permits. Most recently, some paper visitor permits had different dates or illegible dates compared to the actual renewal date. Get the permit, it says, no, it isn't due for another month. And it's just one thing after another that seems to be continuous and never seems to get resolved. I understand there's a possibility of a new contractor. And if so, when does this contract expire?
Well, I think this contract has been in place for a little over a year.
2 years.
Okay, so usually our contracts are 2 years with 3 renewals, but I'll have to look into this specific contract because the previous contractor was uncooperative.
Yeah, that I understood.
And handing it over. If you would want to, have you shared your concerns with Scott? It sounds like you have.
I forward him the emails from our neighborhoods. If they either send me an email or if it comes on our group email, I send it to Scott and ask him to respond. And as I said, he's very responsive. He tries. But
how are the issues in the last 6 months or not?
Oh, there have been issues in the last 6 months, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it crops up periodically. People say they get so frustrated, they wind up going down to the parking lot in Bethesda to renew. But this is supposed to be a digital system where you could sit at home and get it done without having to go out of your house and drive into Bethesda. And
Yeah.
people praise the office in Bethesda, but that's not the way the system was supposed to work.
Yeah. Alan, feel free to send me a note with some of the specific issues people have encountered.
I'll get in touch with you as they come along with the new ones, because the others
Yeah.
are sort of old. But I'll send when I send it to Scott, I'll copy you on it.
Or you could send me a summary of the types of issues you've had, so that
All
I
right.
can follow up with
I'll
Scott,
do
whichever way
that.
works easiest for you.
I'll do that. No, I think Alan has some others too. Maybe we can work together to send you a joint list, because he's got it from other communities.
That's fine. And we don't want that program to be difficult for people. It's difficult to begin with, because you're in a situation where you've got to manage your use of the parking differently than a lot of people in the county who, can park within 500 feet of their house without any trouble. And we don't want it to be more difficult because of the performance of the contractor or other elements like that. So happy to follow up, and I'll find the date of renewal for that contract.
Let's take 2 more questions before we switch to Wade. Jackie?
Okay, Jean Kavanaugh.
Hey, Chris. I live in Seven Oaks, Evanswood. We're just north of downtown Silver Spring, and Wayne Avenue goes through our neighborhood. And as you know, there's been a lot of construction on Wayne Avenue because of the
Kind of
purple
a mess,
line.
right?
It's a mess, and that's
Yeah.
going to be ramping up. But one thing it's done is it's caused a lot of cut through traffic on the secondary and tertiary residential roads. And nobody ever built in any protections for that. Certainty, we knew it would happen. We brought it up 5 years ago, 7 years ago, through the whole process. Nothing was done. So now we're in a situation where specifically a lot of construction's being done at the school at the Wayne Avenue Dale intersection. And anyway, traffic's like water. They go where there's the least resistance. So I know you
I was
all
trying
have.
to figure out how to cut through your neighborhood a few weeks ago, and I was over there looking at the issues and stuck in construction-related traffic.
Well, we'll show you. I'll give you a
Yeah.
tour. But I know you have the short-term and the long-term program for blocking off residential streets through traffic.
Yeah.
One is for the weekend that you established during the, both established during the pandemic. One is more permanent, like you have on Woodland in Woodside Park, where there are just the orange barriers and it says no through traffic. Can MCDOT be more responsive and dynamic and install those no through traffic barriers on the residential streets that are suffering from a 1,000-fold literally increase in cut through traffic?
Well, we actually terminated the long-term street closure program this fall. Most of those were not getting significant neighborhood use and were very difficult to maintain, particularly over last winter. So that longer term program has been sunsetted in the expectation that as the neighborhood greenways actually enter into the capital program, they'll be developed. So Grove Street in Silver Spring was retained because that is an implementation of the longer term neighborhood greenway program. So I don't know that that's the avenue, but what might be the avenue is as the new design build contractor for the purple line comes on board, we can talk to them about doing something more with their traffic management plans to deal with these issues. The previous design builder was not terribly interested in these issues, but with the new attention from MTA, who can't manage it on their own. I mean, you live in that area, the challenges that have occurred with MTA trying to directly oversee utility relocation work. But with their experience in this area and the new contractor, it may be possible that we can get some better, year-long, 2-year-long traffic management plans that
Right.
address
And
these issues.
Chris, if it's not in the contract, they're not going to do it, number one. And number two, we need relief now.
Yeah,
It's happening now. It's a school year. The school is, most of the kids walk to school. It's a bad situation, and it needs to be fixed like now.
I hear you. I will follow up tomorrow with the Purple Line team, Maricela, and see if there's an opportunity to get some more traffic mitigation into that negotiation before they finalize a contract.
And they can put up the barriers that say no through traffic. I mean, people are violating the no left turn signs, et cetera. But some orange barriers with no through traffic that allow the residents to get to their homes. That would be.
Yeah, I understand that. Unfortunately, it's related to the regulation for traffic restrictions unless it's construction oriented. So let me follow up on that.
Right.
topic.
This is construction oriented. Yeah.
I hear you. Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Hey, Kathleen Samii.
Sammy, yeah, yes,
Sammy.
hi, thank you. Well, just a few things. Thank you for this opportunity. I just have 3 points. One, I want to support 100% Peggy Dennis on the trees. When I drive on the Beltway from Silver Spring towards Rockville Pike, the trees look like ghosts. They're covered in vines. They're right off and around the Beltway. And I'm afraid that within the next 5 years, they will be smothered and dead. And it's really critical we keep that tree canopy. So that's number one. Number two, and I know Colesville Road, is a state highway, but I would like to ask you, I have 3 concerns. One is my husband, I witnessed a near-death experience at that intersection of Colesville and Dale on the 1st of this month. This is a recurring death trap at Colesville and Dale. For the 20 plus years I've lived here, we have tried to get those reversible lanes stopped, but that's not the real crux of the problem. The crux of the problem is, I believe we need center islands. We need something to slow down the traffic. The state highway people want to push people through, and cars are, when they leave downtown Silver Spring and they get about 400 to 600 yards from the intersection, they put the pedal to the metal and they don't realize there's an arc in the road and they never see the red light. And I think if you did a traffic statistics, you would find out that there are many close calls. I mean, I can't even describe what my husband described happened to him, but he's not the only one. And I've had other family members. I know it's a state highway, but I guess my ask is this: who do we corral and how do we corral them? And how do we get some advocacy from downtown all the way actually to the Beltway? Because as others are saying, you can't walk safely to Blair High School on the other side of the Beltway from our communities. And there's really 2 hotspots: the pedestrian pathway to Blair and Colesville and Dale. And I look around at, Trimberg Parkway, Rockville Pike, Connecticut Avenue, you name it. Everyone's got center islands except for us. And I think there's some sight lines that are bad. The lighting, I could go in depth about what I think has to change with the lighting. They've got these green arrows at nighttime and you think it's green, but you go another 400 feet, it's a red light. So who do we corral? How do we go about it? How do we get money? Who are our people to work with these communities and solve this? It's very severe problem. People are dying. People have died there. So what do we do?
Well, it's obviously challenging. It is a state highway, as you mentioned. It's a high throughput road. It does not mean it has to be a high speed road in order to carry significant traffic. The principal people that would be responsible to work with us, and we're happy to speak with them about it, are Derek Gunn at the State Highway Administration, who's the Assistant District Engineer.
I'm sorry,
Derek Gunn.
Gunn.
And I would engage Michael Paler from our team, who's our Traffic Engineering Operations and Safety Chief. And initiate, there's been conversation about Colesville Road before, obviously.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And safety issues near the former library site and Dale Drive, and the reversible lanes are a challenge, and the no left turn lanes are an issue. You know, if you're not paying attention as you're driving and you come across a car stop to turn left with the relatively confusing road environment with overhead signs, yes, there are lots of challenges here. This is also an area where there's a desire to take one of the 6 lanes and have it be a bus lane in the peak direction. So that might get some study and evaluation over the next year or so, and might be an avenue to look for other safety improvements in that area. That would be part of the 29 evaluation that we're kicking off right now. So I think if you get in touch with Derek Gunn and Michael Paler, I'm happy to relay this concern to them myself as well. We can try to get some focus on that. I don't know that there's an easy solution or an obvious answer, but speed management is clearly a priority here.
How about the statistics? Who do we go to get the accident statistics? Because
Your
my
next
husband wants
speaker-
one.
Your next
Oh,
speaker has that information.
Okay,
and
great.
A countywide database of that information.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Sure.
This is Jerry Garson. I'd like to thank Chris Conklin for giving us a wonderful presentation. Hopefully we'll have him back in the future. And I'd like to now introduce Wade Holland, who's the Vision Zero Coordinator in the Office of the Montgomery County Executive. That's Mark Eldridge. And he's going to discuss pedestrian safety and Vision Zero. And the one question I do have for him, is it possible for us as part of Vision Zero to actually get crosswalks within a half a mile of every school painted, so people know at least school children might be crossing?
All right, well, thanks to Jerry and Alan for inviting me. As mentioned, I'm Wade Holland, the Vision Zero Coordinator, housed within the Office of County Executive, but work closely with our partners in County DOT, the State Highway Administration, police, public information, schools, I think a growing list of over 20 different state and county agencies to really transform our streets into safer places to, whether you're driving, walking, rolling, or biking. So with that, I will switch to sharing my screen, and I will have a short PowerPoint presentation kind of talking about some of the changes and updates we've had since I last talked to this group about 8 months ago, back in March. All right, can anyone confirm they can see the presentation?
Yes.
All right,
Yes.
thank you for confirming. All right. So some of the recent highlights, like I said, since we last met in March, oops, it's too fast. We've installed some new pedestrian hybrid beacons. So for those who aren't familiar with these, you can see the picture there on the left of a pedestrian hybrid beacon. These are slightly different than traffic signals in that, you know, they don't have a green light. They only have an amber light and a red light. So when they're not in use, they haven't been activated by a pedestrian who wants to cross, they are dark. So if you see these kind of designs with the kind of basically 2 eyes and a mouth, these pedestrian hybrid beacons, you can travel through as you normally would. And you know, once a pedestrian activates the beacon, it will start flashing the amber light. So again, just like with any traffic light, amber means slow down, caution, and then it will show a red light, which means stop. So recently we've installed 3 of these in Aspen Hill and 3 in downtown Silver Spring. The 3 in Aspen Hill area are along Belt Road. So there's 3 in succession along Belt Road between Lay Hill Road and Georgia Avenue. And that adds to the previous Aspen Hill area pedestrian hybrid beacon that we installed on Aspen Hill Road. And also in the Aspen Hill area, the State Highway Administration installed a full traffic signal at Georgia Avenue and May Street to kind of create some more protected crossings along Georgia Avenue. In downtown Silver Spring, we've added pedestrian hybrid beacons along Spring Street and First Avenue. That's along the bicycle network along Spring Street. And then just recently we've installed but haven't activated yet 2 pedestrian hybrid beacons along Fenton Street. One's at Roder Road, and the second one is at the entrance to the Whole Foods CVS. So all in total, we've installed about over 3 dozen beacons and traffic signals in the last couple of years to create some of those more protected crossings. For road safety audits, I'll talk a little bit about that more in a bit, but again, really focused this fiscal year for fiscal year 22 for the county, really focused on the Aspen Hill area. So working on Connecticut Avenue and Georgia Avenue with our state partners, as well as Brt Road, which is a county road. We also have a focus in kind of edge of Silver Spring, East County, working on New Hampshire Avenue, again with our state partners, as well as our Prince George's County partners, kind of a newer type of bi-county audit along Maryland 650, which is New Hampshire Avenue, between south of the Beltway, I-495, all the way through the county borders down to Piney Branch Road, where kind of New Hampshire Avenue comes in and out of Montgomery County into Prince George's County. Safe walking routes, as Chris mentioned earlier, we're advancing a lot of our neighborhood greenway projects, and our first kind of larger pilot is along Grove Street in downtown Silver Spring. So in the picture there, you can see a gentleman installing some of the barriers to create a new walking lane. So it has a couple of different purposes of those kind of projects, is to create dedicated space for people walking and biking, as well as, traffic calming devices that lay slow traffic going through that area to make it really a neighborhood street. Bikeways, again, as Chris mentions, a lot of bikeways under construction across the network. A lot of that construction is being done for the Bethesda and downtown networks. So the downtown Silver Spring and downtown Bethesda loops are under construction. On the north end of Fenton Street, there's the beginning of our third protected intersection at Cameron and Fenton. Again, the Bethesda loop is currently under construction. We have to wrap up some of that, the Capitol Crescent Surface Trail project coming up soon. And in the Up County, we have the Embry Lane Muncaster Mill connection that will help connect between the ICC Trail and some of the current shared use paths along Muncaster Mill Road. And White Flint West, which Chris talked about. And then we also have words on shared use path along Frederick Road as well. We also talked about the Shared Streets program last time we talked, so a quick update on that. So the county's shared street programs, which includes the streeteries, which are in Wheaton, Bethesda, and in Silver Spring, as well as I believe the municipalities in Tacoma Park and Rockville are going to keep their shared streets and streeteries open through next spring. So those programs will continue as is. And then as part of our work plan for this fiscal year, we're also working with DOT to work on kind of what the permanent version of these kind of shared streets program looks like. And there's also the State Highway Administration is currently operating the Shared Streets pilot project along University Boulevard that runs between Amherst Avenue and Arcola Avenue. The project was initially supposed to end through November. That and determining if it could stay on longer or if it will wrap up as is, depending on some feedback they've gotten from different neighborhoods and elected officials to keep that project ongoing, just as the county projects are. As mentioned in an earlier slide, a lot of new signals and beacons are being installed around the county. And again, a lot of our focus on creating more protected crossings and some of our dangerous roadways in the Wheaton, Glenmont, Aspen Hill area. So if you see the stars over the little dots, that means we've installed those in recent years. So again, also some work in Bethesda and Silver Spring to provide some more protected crossings along roads like Wisconsin Avenue and Fenton Street, all on the network. And for Bikeway projects, we have about 4 larger projects that are under design and about 8 that will be either currently or under construction this fiscal year. So I mentioned the Bethesda and Silver Spring loops. You can see this picture of recent construction that was starting on the Cameron Street and Fenton Street project to create that protected intersection. And that's just kind of, again, the top part of the Fenton Street project. There's going to be another meeting on the Fenton Street project, which is further south of here for kind of the larger bike network that's going to be along Fenton Street. I believe the project manager will be sending out information soon about another meeting that'll happen before the holidays. As Chris mentioned, one of the larger projects that are being done in White Flint in Pike and Rose area is the White Flint West workaround, which kind of reconfigures Executive Boulevard, Town Road, and Old Georgetown Road. And while these are reconfigured for traffic, they're also going to have these kind of complete streets designed in terms of bike lanes, sidewalk cafes, sidewalks, to really reimagine that space to make it pedestrian friendly and inviting for everyone. And kind of adjacent to that is work along Rockville Pike itself to make it easier to get between the Pike and Rose area and Marinelli Road, where the south end of the White Flint Station is. So we're moving forward with design and hopefully construction of improving the sidewalks between Marinelli Road and then up through Old Georgetown Road to include changes of the intersection of Old Georgetown Road and Rockville Pike. They will remove all the hot right turn lanes along that to make it easier for pedestrians to cross, have less distance to cross, and not have issues with fast turning movements from drivers. So if you want to see more about projects that are going on in your neighborhood, we have an interactive map on our website. The Vision Zero website for the county is montgomerycountymd.gov/Vision Zero. And you can kind of zoom in. If you click on one of the dots or click on one of the lines, it'll kind of give you more information about that project, as well as links to the project page if we have a dedicated project page for those kind of larger bike projects. Now there's some of the other larger road projects. Chris mentioned speed management is a big part of Vision Zero. You know, the lower the speed, the lower the energy that gets transferred during a crash. So we're always looking at different types of speed management. And one thing we're doing for kind of the local roads and business streets is what we call our 20 is plenty pilot. I believe I might have mentioned this to this group back in March, but we implemented the 20 is plenty pilot back in the spring. And this is a phase 1 pilot for areas along in Germantown, Wood Glen, and Long Branch neighborhoods. And we're still collecting data and monitoring for those roadways, not only for the speeds that are being used on those roadways where we've implemented it, but also seeing how that affects the areas around those roads in terms of safety and speeds. Another important update is, you know, we have all these changes going on. We mentioned all these new bike lanes, these kind of newer bus stop types, all these kind of things we're doing to the networks, especially in Bethesda and Silver Spring. We want to make sure that these are inclusive designs, making sure that they're safe for everyone who gets around, especially for people with disabilities. Recently, MCDOT finalized their guidelines for pedestrian navigation for the visually impaired residents in urban centers. Not only will those guidelines help us design all of our facilities with people with no or low vision in mind, but actually kind of at front of line. So what we make these facilities, it's intuitive, no matter how you're getting around, and no matter you know, sighted or not, you can get around these facilities, and they'll be somewhat intuitive as well. On the enforcement side, so one thing that changed in the beginning of this fiscal year back in July was a change to our traffic motor unit distribution. We've moved from a kind of district model, which all 6 police districts used to have a set amount of traffic complaint officers. We've now moved to a centralized model where many of those traffic complaint officers have moved from the district stations to a central motors unit. This allows us to be much more proactive in our enforcement work within MCPD, focusing on our crash hotspots and our arterial roads where we know we have the most speed and also the most likelihood of having those crashes end in serious or fatal injuries. And those are consistently working on these kind of our most wanted lists for dangerous behaviors, which include distracted driving, not wearing seatbelts, impaired driving, aggressive and speeding driving, as well, especially now with Street Smart kicking off this month, drivers not yielding to pedestrians and bicyclists. I believe in the first quarter of the new Central Motors unit, we've written about 5,000 speeding violations. Looking forward to the holidays, which are somehow right around the corner already. We are going to kick off again this month, about mid-November, our holiday alcohol task force that runs kind of through Thanksgiving all the way through New Year's. And this is a joint task force between municipal, county, state, and also park police to really focus on getting impaired drivers off the road. Unfortunately, we saw during the pandemic that impaired driving was through the roof for fatal crashes and just overall citations, that even with the holiday task force and much lower driving that happened during the holidays of 2020, we still had about similar arrest rates for impaired driving. So again, that's the enforcement side of it, but then also for the holiday alcohol task force, we also work on the preventative side, working with partners like the Washington Regional Alcohol Program that provides the Sober Ride program, and they had some great news just from last week for Halloween. That Saturday before Halloween, they had Sober Ride in effect. About almost 800 people in the Washington, D.C. area use Sober Rides. That was 800 people that were not potentially going to drive home impaired. So that was actually one of the higher uses of the RAP program and Sober Ride, even pre-pandemic. So that was great to see that people are aware of it and using that safety service. So with that, again, thank you for inviting me and giving you this update on the Vision Zero program and some of the stuff that's going on across the county. Normally I get to be the doom and gloom guy because I talk about, some serious stuff, but there's some really exciting things going on across Maryland and across Montgomery County in terms of our network. We're looking at some of the biggest changes to their network and our transit options, really since the creation of Metro, with new BRT options being created, new bike lanes, new protected facilities for bike lanes, new trails that are coming online with those developments, and of course the Purple Line eventually too. That's going to be quite a different and hopefully safer place to get around in the coming decade.
Okay, let's take some questions. Chris Meyer, you're up. Unmute, please.
Yes. Hey, so you mentioned the corridor on New Hampshire down to Piney Branch, and that is a particular pain point for me because it's a very dangerous intersection there at Piney Branch in New Hampshire. And as you mentioned, it's like that little nugget is in Prince George's County. So it gets a lot of it. It seems like it's not getting any attention. Could you speak more about any efforts to go on there, especially because there's no other crossings of Northwest Branch, so on the creek. So in order to get east-west, you really have to use that intersection. But it's just terrible. I mean, just today, this morning, a lady wasn't watching and rode up onto the sidewalk, like literally 10 feet in front of me. And there's a lot of pedestrians in this area too, in the Long Branch area. So yeah, I'd really like to hear more about any efforts to work with Prince George's and clean up that area.
Yeah, thanks for that question. So we're at the early stages of this project for the study. We were given a grant by the Council of Governments, and that's why we were able to do it in a bi-county way, because working with my counterpart in Prince George's County, who does the Vision Zero program there, we both said I could see in our data, I could see in her data that we had similar issues on both sides of the border across Northampton and Southampton Drive. We knew it was an issue. It's been on our list at the county level for a while to get this moved forward, and the regional safety grant was a way to move that forward. So it's great to win that grant. So like you said, one thing we'll be doing is, as we start to get the contractors online, is to do a full field audit of the area, but also hopefully at least one public meeting with folks to get their feedback and lived experiences for that road and their issues along there. So I'll be sure when we move to that phase of the project that I'll make sure to let the Civic Federation know about that.
Next question, Pete Levitas. So mute.
Hi, thanks very much. Hi, Wade. Street that I live on. I live on Chevy Chase Boulevard in the first block from Wisconsin, sort of heading. So you make the left turn off Wisconsin heading west. That's the block I'm on. And part of the block does not have any sidewalk. From where I live and then going west doesn't have any sidewalk. And people drive pretty quickly on that part of the street. I think they drive pretty quickly further down Chevy Chase Boulevard as well, but there are often people who sort of speed right through that area. And since there are no sidewalks and my kids are pretty young, I'm a little bit concerned about the sort of pedestrian safety on that part of the block. So I was wondering, is it your department or someone else that I could talk to about the possibility of doing two things on that block? One is considering putting some of the speed bumps in that area to slow down traffic, or in addition to that, improving the lighting around there. The lighting is it's super dark. I mean, there are really, really dim lights on top of the light poles. You could not read a map right under that light. You can do anything. You can barely see your hand in front of your face. So it's very dark and there's no sidewalk. And people drive pretty quickly. So I don't know who to talk to about that. or what, what kind of budget is available for that kind of thing. But I was curious about that. And then just as a second side point, you mentioned, I thought on your map, the lower speed right on that area in Wisconsin, right, right sort of passing by there. I think from Bradley heading south, it's recently slowed the speed limit there from either 35 or 40 down to 30. And I think that's a great thing, but it does make it actually a little bit more challenging to get out of the development. Just because of the way the traffic is paced. And if you're trying to make a left at a Chevy Chase Boulevard onto Wisconsin, you easily wait 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes to do that at the wrong time of the day. So just separately, I was wondering, is there any sort of traffic study that is done to look at the flow of traffic based on the new speed limits to set it up so that people can get out of the development, with some sort of reasonable dispatch? So 2 questions, thanks.
Yeah, so for your first question, it looks like as you were talking, I was making sure, because you said the word Chevy Chase, so I first wanted to check and make sure that you were on a county road and not on a, because if it's a town road, it's the town would deal with it, but it looks like you're on a county road. So yeah, that would be us. And there is a request process for sidewalks. So there's a form online. You just go to the Montgomery County website, just type in sidewalks, and there's a form you can fill out. We have a long backlog, about 3 to 4 years for sidewalk requests.
Well,
but the first part is to make the request and you can get in our queue.
Right. So just to be clear, I mean, I would love a sidewalk, but at least one of my neighbors doesn't want it. And I don't want to get in a massive battle with them. What I was interested in is, since we're never going to get a sidewalk there, is having some speed bumps and having better lighting so we can avoid the problems that come with not having a sidewalk. I mean, if you drive around that development or walk around, many streets don't have sidewalks. It's a lot of people, walking on the street to go to Somerset Elementary School or to go to Norwood. Most of that community doesn't have sidewalks, but some speed bumps and better lighting would definitely help. Who do I talk to about that?
Yeah, so you can go to the 311, either call 311 or go to mc301.com, and the keyword search is traffic study, and that will kick off, and you'll fill out a form saying, where the location is, and say, I have concerns about speeding along my road. Could we study this potential any sort of speed management? Looking at the size of your road, I don't know if it'll qualify for speed humps, but there may be other traffic safety improvements they could make. So what they'll basically go out, and once the request comes in, they will go out, send the area engineer out there and do some sort of speed study to see kind of what the activity is on the road, and that can kind of help them judge what the potential countermeasures would be.
Okay, I'm sorry. And where do I go to do that? It's just the MCPS site?
So mc311.com, and or you can just call 311 during 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And if you're on the website, the keyword is traffic studies, and so that will create a request that will go directly to MCDOT's traffic operations section, and that will kick off. It basically gets assigned to a traffic area engineer, and that can kick off some sort of study about. So if you mentioned the lighting and you mentioned your concerns about speed, that just basically kicks out the process for resident complaint investigation.
Great. And then just separately, is there some process by which people would, you guys would study the traffic to figure out about all those exit points onto Wisconsin and whether the new speed limit, whether the traffic signals can be modified based on the new speed limit and exiting there?
Yeah, usually when the speed limits are lower, they do modify the traffic signal timing to make sure that obviously the green progression on the main road they're progressing at the speed that's now at. So if you have any questions about that, let's see, what would be the best place to go for that? That would usually, because it is a state road and they lower the speed limit there. So I can put a link in the chat. They will link you to the state's website and they can look into and study that.
Great. Thank you very much.
Okay, Karen Cordry, ask your question.
Yeah, it's kind of two-part thing. One was there was a long discussion on Nextdoor recently that I was reading about whether people were actually using bike lanes, or like on University Boulevard, I think was the one they were talking about there, or whether it was a total boondoggle and a waste of money and so on and so on and so on. And the other thing that I just read today was an article that was talking about electric bikes, which I hadn't really been particularly focused on, but was saying that they are really, even more perhaps than electric cars, maybe the up and coming way of really trying to reduce car usage, trying to reduce some of these things, and that they really are a very effective way of the short kind of trips that we all still keep our car around for, going to the grocery store and so forth. So, I mean, are you all, one, I mean, what do you actually see in terms of traffic counting on the bike lanes? You know, is it really getting usage? And two, are you all looking at electric bikes in terms of bike sharing, perhaps? Using that as a way of introducing people to this thing or making the bikes available for these kind of short trips that would be a real way of getting people to get rid of a car entirely, which going back to Thrive is another issue of how do you get cars to really not just be not driven, but not be around at all.
Yeah, so in terms of the University Boulevard Bike Project that is being done by the State Highway Administration, actually through a federal grant to
That's
do
true.
that
Yeah,
study.
they were saying it was a state project. Yeah.
Yep. So it's a state project, and part of that is they do have a counter out there to track how much traffic's being used by driving pedestrians and bicyclists. So as part of their evaluation of that project and lessons learned from the pilot, they will be evaluating that data. We also do have some permanent traffic counters on some of our bike lanes. There's one at the Capitol Crescent Trail. There's one at Colesville and 2nd Street, right next to the McDonald's. Those are always collecting data as well. Obviously, with the pandemic, all traffic counts, ped bike and people driving is way down, especially with telework as well. Those counts are still low. So it's kind of hard to judge any of our projects as like either success or failure for anything recently, because we just don't really have like what that new normal is going to be in terms of any facility, how that's going to be utilized. But in terms of e-bikes, yes, there's been a huge surge in e-bike purchases across the U.S. I think every day I probably see someone on an e-bike, right? You see them going by, and those are allowed to be used. You can't use them on sidewalk, but you can use them in the bike lanes. So that's another way to get people to use e-bikes is, create a safe space for them to be used. You mentioned Capital Bike Share. So Capital Bike Share does have e-bikes in its fleet. So if you use the Capital Bike Share app or go on the website, if you see like a little lightning bolt next to the station, that means there's at least one e-bike available to be rented. And I've used the Capital Bike Share e-bikes, and they are pretty fun.
Okay, next up, Joan King.
Thank you. I have been saying for many, many years, pedestrians be damned. I have been a pedestrian. I am now full-time pedestrian and an octogenarian, and I live on Eastern Avenue, and as I said earlier, in a co-housing community. And it's quite an experience being a pedestrian without a car, because most people just get into their cars and get into the kind of the downtown Silver Spring part. But over these years, as I walk by the metro, the intersection of Wayne and Colesville at the Silver Spring Metro, I keep thinking they're going to change that, and I don't know what you call it, the way the light, the amount of time between the walk sign and when the lights change. There obviously there is a term for that, and I'm not sure what it is. But this is the way people get off of the Silver Spring Metro and walk into downtown Silver Spring to all the exciting things we have in downtown Silver Spring. And if they're on the Metro, they walk up Colesville, cross Wayne. And that intersection, people are standing there, and I will tell you that even I go across against the light because the lights, they're ridiculous. And for years I've known this, and I've never called 311, okay? But since I have this chance tonight, I want to say somebody needs to look at that intersection's light. Somebody, maybe they haven't gotten killed there yet, but it's really a bad intersection. And since we're talking about intersections, the intersection at Colesville and East-West Highway is another really bad intersection. The cars that are coming up Colesville, they've probably gotten off the Beltway, and then they're turning on East-West Highway. They don't pay any attention to pedestrians, not at all. I mean, you have to be so careful at that intersection. So this is where I come up with pedestrians be damned. what we have to do, and I have no, it's not going to be in my lifetime, okay? I certainly understand that. But eventually we have to get to the place where no car can go around a corner when the pedestrian walk light is on. That happens to me probably daily, okay? Wherever I am and there's an intersection, I have to be so careful that some car isn't just turning, because they get to turn right. They get to turn right on green. I'm not even talking about red. They are turning right on their green light. But at the same time, that is when the pedestrian can cross. I mean, how insane is that? I can tell you that has to be why people aren't, there aren't very many people out walking, okay? And I can tell you that that has to be one of the reasons. It is dangerous out there on the streets, and the older I'm getting, the more dangerous it is, because even when I get a walk sign, sometimes it's hard to get across the street. So that's something, if you are serious about pedestrians and people walking and getting rid of their cars, we gave up our car because of the climate. But I'll tell you, it's been a tremendous challenge, and it has not gotten any easier in the 15 years since we did it. And the older I get, the harder it gets. So thank you for letting me vent.
All right, yeah, thanks for that, Joan. Yeah, and I'm pretty familiar. I used to live up on Colesville, a little further up. So I think one thing I'll mention for, especially the Colesville Spring, for Colesville, Wayne, and Second there was a lot of signal timing changes when that bike lane came online. There's a new bicycle signal that was installed when you get to help bicyclists have dedicated crossing phase when they go across, when they do cross Colesville Road on the bicycle facility. So there was a lot of changes, including some no right turns on red signage.
It was like that before the bicycle. It's been that way, okay, for 15 years at least. That's how long I've been walking there. I just want somebody, I have even offered to go out in whoever makes these decisions, in somebody's car and say, okay, this intersection, because I walk this every day. And I have a feeling that the people in charge are not even walking these streets.
Okay. Next up, Justin and Laurel. Thank you, Joan.
Hi, Wade. It's Laurel. Thank you so much for the Vision Zero project. I think that's a super important step forward in our community. You mentioned enforcement, and similar to Joan and other people, I just see blatant breaking of rules, speeding, disregarding no left turn signs, and it puts the people on my street, in my neighborhood, in our community at risk. And I have never once seen anybody get ticketed for turning left illegally onto my street. I see cars flying through our neighborhood, certainly much, much faster than 25 miles an hour, but there's no enforcement. So where is this enforcement piece?
Right. So the enforcement, well, one thing we've definitely done with our new centralized traffic unit is to kind of prioritize these hotspots. So part of that is really focusing a lot of our efforts on the arterials. So that's the Colesville Roads, Rockville Pikes, Connecticut Avenues of the county. But to make sure we still have some sort of reactive to the issues like you mentioned in terms of like left turns illegal into the neighborhood, we still have traffic complaint officers available in each district. So depending on your police district, you can email your district commander about the issue spots, and they can go out there and check the spot and see if there's any need for spot enforcement.
Would that be, to follow up, would that be the same contact to, like, the signs are old, dusty, small, on 4-lane road off to the far right when they're cutting over to the left, they're hard to see. So I think some people are genuinely not breaking the law, they just don't see the sign. So would that be the same contact for better signage?
That would not. So the district commander would help you in terms of any sort of spot enforcement issues. But if in terms of refreshing a sign, actually, I'm just going to throw this into the chat here. We have a list of common service requests that come in through the county, and I'll put that in this. So there, at the bottom of the list there is links to Vision Zero related service requests. So in terms of just some general maintenance things like you mentioned, in terms of getting signs upgraded, sidewalk repairs, information about speed cameras, and also links to municipal governments and state governments. So that's where you would go, and potentially if you have issues with a sign, either sign's been washed out or a sign is needs to be refreshed, we can also work with the sign shop in MCDOT to replace that.
Thank you for that resource. I appreciate it.
Okay, Kathleen, Sammy?
Yes, thank you for this follow-up opportunity. Wade, when I spoke with Chris, he said that you're the person that talks about the statistics. Is that, where do I go to get the state highway of Colesville and Dale, et cetera? Where do I find that info?
You can just send me an email, just same as my name, wade.holland@montgomerycountymd.gov with the specific request, and I can process that information for you.
Okay.
There's
thanks.
also all our crash data is available on our open data platform, Data Montgomery, but it's kind of scary to use.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can just grab that information for you, because we kind of have a prearranged script that we can run to just grab that information.
Okay, and I just have a quick follow-up, something that's I've just been so curious about for a very long time, because I was on the Sawika president. I also was the pedestrian chair of for Dale Drive and walking to school years ago. The issues have never gone away. We've done some mitigation. But when I drive on Strathmore Avenue from Wisconsin Avenue at Strathmore all the way across to Connecticut Avenue, they have, through Garrett Park, they have a beautiful pedestrian pathway. They have sidewalks that are offset from the curb. Everyone seems to go about 20 miles an hour. It's very slow moving, even though there's always a line of traffic. It's beautifully designed. There's something about the setting that's very calming, and it feels like it creates a sort of a visceral change in people to slow down. And I've always wondered, how did they do that? How did they get that? And why can't we get that on Dale Drive? And I'm just curious, who knows the history of that road, how it was designed, and how we can get that, something like that on our Dale Drive, which goes, from Colesville all the way to Piney Branch.
Yeah, and I'm sure you're probably aware of this. There is a current study underway for Dale Drive, at least between Georgia and Colesville, to do a lot of, there's some interim safety treatments that are already along Dale Drive. This is kind of making some more permanent improvements, including a new shared use path along that segment of the road. So that project is still moving forward. And I believe if they already had it or just had it, there was a public meeting about some of the updates along that project.
Yeah, I guess what I'm really asking about is really, we've had the DOT put in crosswalks and other stuff in some segments, but I will just say it's ugly. This Strathmore pathway feels viscerally wonderful. And I feel like the Dale Drive is just getting more urbanized, more patchy. It still doesn't feel safe. It doesn't really feel like it's creating something to calm the cars down. It's like, I feel like we just keep doing more and more patchwork. And I know more residents are upset about still more unsafe crossings, but I feel like it almost needs a re-envision from with a traffic, not just an engineer, but a road design, something that's very community oriented instead of anyway, I don't know. Is there someone in charge that I could add my voice to in your group, or?
Well, I think that, the one thing is, we talk about kind of re-engineering. Some of it's also not just the roadway, but just how the buildings are set back, how the buildings are designed, they're close to the road, kind of how it creates the space. So I don't think you probably want to tear down the houses to change that.
No,
but we are.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Strathmore are very close to the street, actually closer than some of the Dale Drive homes. It just has a different feeling. So.
Yeah, so one thing we have in our new Complete Streets Design Guide is when things do go over for redevelopment, which obviously Dale Drive being a residential neighborhood wouldn't see this kind of redevelopment, but trying to encourage the way that things redevelop too in the design guides is not only does it help with helping to fund for our developers funding projects along that roadway, but also kind of changes how you, like you said, how you feel when you drive through that. It helps you, it's what we call like self-reinforcing roadways where you want to drive slower. So that
Right.
affects not only, the actual way the roadway and the sidewalks are all laid out, but also how the buildings interact with the roadway can also change how people feel, how fast they want to drive.
This is Jerry Garson. I'd like to comment on that. The thing with Strathmore, even though it's a state highway, it's mostly in the town of Garrett Park. Garrett Park has done a good deal of work on basically on what type of houses were built there in that. And the problem is that both Strathmore and Dale Boulevard are alternates to the Beltway. So whenever the Beltway does not have adequate capacity, which basically in the morning basically happens currently between 6 a.m. and 10 a.m., there's not enough capacity on the Beltway for the traffic to move freely. So therefore it diverts onto Dale Boulevard. And almost every afternoon on Strathmore, you have basically eastbound, the traffic is diverted because there's not enough capacity. The people who designed the Beltway were very smart. They decided you can easily put 7 lanes to filter into 4 without causing traffic congestion between midnight and 6 a.m. But after 6 a.m., we start regularly getting traffic on the Beltway, which then diverts traffic onto these local streets.
Okay. Chris Reynolds, you have a question?
Yeah, hi. I wanted to follow up on, you mentioned briefly the Metropolitan Branch Trail and some improvements there. I know DC has been working very hard to really beef that up and make it a beautiful trail, but in my experience, the Montgomery County portion is pretty lousy and pretty bendy and easy to lose your way and end up in some little neighborhoods. I'd love to see some improvements there because I think it really could be, as Karen said, these electric bikes can be transformative. And I'd love for the Metropolitan Branch Trail, particularly as it intersects or hooks up with Sligo Creek. I think it could be a real, bike freeway for people who work in the city and live up here in Silver Spring. So curious to hear more about what's coming and the improvements there.
Yes, the Metropolitan Branch Trail, when it will basically reconnect to the rebuilt Metropolitan or the Capitol Crescent Trail along the Purple Line. So I believe by next spring we'll start construction on the part of the Metropolitan Branch Trail that goes from the Silver Spring Transit Center south and then through to kind of where it connects down to Fenton Street. So as DC is building up their portion of Metropolitan Branch Trail up to the Maryland line, we're going to build our portion of the Metropolitan Branch Trail. So basically be able to get kind of from Union Station all the way to Silver Spring Transit Center, all along one trail. And that'll eventually connect all the way into Bethesda using the Capitol Crescent Trail route. And then you can obviously take the existing Capitol Crescent Trail all the way back down through Georgetown. So it should be creating a nice seamless loop.
Excellent. Glad to hear we're doing it. Thank you so much.
So I've got a question for you, Wade. Many people in this call have talked about the problems on Dale Drive between George Avenue and Piney Branch Road. One part of this segment is really very problematic between Colesville Road and Wayne Avenue, where the posted speed limit is 25, then it's 20 going up to Pershing, then it's 30 going down the hill, then it's 25 to the Hawk signal and to Wayne Avenue. Does that strike you just from the seat of the pants as sort of being an unusual number of speed indication changes, with less than half a mile?
Not familiar with that exact the progression of speeds there, but sometimes obviously the roads do change over time. So there would be maybe an opportunity there to see, if we were making piecemeal changes to speed limits on that roadway, there may be an opportunity to kind of look at that holistically and see, what makes sense for the entire road. I can't speak to it because one thing we'll see, thinking like roads like Veers Mill Road or Rockville Pike or Georgia Avenue, because they go through different contexts. They have different kind of speed limits as they go along, but as mentioned, Dale Drive is not too long. So maybe there's an opportunity to look at those as we advance some of these projects like the shared use path segment between Colesville Road and Georgia Avenue.
Wade, I will, this is Jean Kavanaugh. I will add that according to the Planning Department's Master Plan of Highways and Transitways, Dale Drive is supposed to be 25 miles per hour. So I don't know where the gap is between that plan, which was approved by the county council. So I would imagine that means the Department of Transportation should be implementing that plan. So what's the gap between that plan and the speed limit signs that are actually posted on that?
Yeah,
on
so
the-
yeah, thanks for that question. So one thing to point out when you look at the speed limits on the master plans of highways and transit ways, those are supposed to be not just the posted speed limits, those are kind of the design speed limit. The design speed is what they want the road to function as. So we don't normally change the speed limits without changing the roadway. Because basically if you kind of change the speed limits without changing the features of the roadway to get that design speed closer to the posted speed limit, you actually sometimes increase crashes because people start driving at different disparate rates on the road. So the master plan of highways and transitways, that's kind of against a long-term plan. So we don't always set the speed limits immediately to those. They need the kind of project to come along with it to make that roadway match that updated design speed.
Well, they do want to do 20 is plenty, and that would be lowering the speed limits, along these roads. So without road changes. So that'll be interesting to see how that works out. But we'd ask you to, look at the changes in the speed limits along that segment from Colesville Road over to Piney Branch. On the other side of Wayne Avenue in our neighborhood, people have complained about excessive speed and crashes from Fleetwood down to Hartford Avenue down by the Dale Drive Neighborhood Park. We put in a request for a traffic audit of that area, and to our surprise, the DOT, agreed, within 24 hours that they would do that study and get the results back to us by January, February of 2022. I see that Kerry Lamari's got his hand raised.
Mr. Holland, I'd like you to talk a little bit more about design speed of these roads. I also see the disconnect. I mean, it seems like we're making decisions based on judgment rather than engineering on a lot of these roads. I'm an electrician, I drive every side road, every artery. Could you talk a little more about that? Because it confuses me sometimes.
Yeah, so there's updated guidance that's been produced by the county as well as the state to align with, because both the county and the state have. We're trying to make sure that these roads, as we redesign them, put in safety stuff to make sure that we have what we call is kind of a self-enforcing roadway. So if we do something different to an arterial or whatever kind of road it is, we have different kind of guidelines we've now implemented to try and make the design speed, which is basically what we want people to drive, or hopefully they will drive, kind of match the posted speed limit. And ideally, if you get the design speed and the posted speed together, people will drive that speed because you've designed it for them to go at that speed to make it safer and match the context of the roadway and the neighborhood that it goes through. And so some of the ways we do that, you mentioned, we talked a little bit earlier with the question about, speed hump, something we use commonly in neighborhood residential areas for traffic calming in neighborhoods. There's other things we call like chicanes, which are basically it's a deflection. So you kind of have to, the lane will kind of shift. So you have to kind of shift with the traffic, which gets people to slow down. We actually even use that for our bicycle lanes when they cross certain pedestrian crosswalks, get bicyclists to slow down as well. So it can be used for all modes to get people to slow down, make sure that they're going the appropriate speeds in those places, and for making sure everyone's safe. There's other things too, like we talked a little bit earlier about cars turning left, turning right. There's other things you can do to the radius of the turning intersection, as I mentioned too. Adjusting or potentially removing the hot right turn lanes can also affect how quickly people turn and go through intersections as well. So a lot of tools in the toolbox, and we always try and make sure that when we see these problems, we kind of go through the toolbox and see what ways can we get people to drive safe speeds and for everyone to get through those places safely.
Before we turn to Chris Meyer and his question, Wade, what's the most effective way for homeowners associations, civic associations, and residents to raise particular pedestrian safety concerns that they have with your office in the county?
So there's a couple different ways. You can always go through your county council members, both your district office or your at-large members to start a request. they can filter that to us. You can call 311, again, that's 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., or go to mt301.com and submit a request. And again, that's only for county roads. For state roads, the states have their own intake forms, but that kind of is the first way to kick off requests for kind of neighborhood traffic calming requests. And then, of course, we also have all of our kind of data informed projects that we promote across the county to do our larger safety projects. So we can't always get to everything at once. Like I wish we could, get it all done this year and then fire me tomorrow, but it's going to take time to get through all of these roads that we know that need to make a lot of safety improvements on.
Over our dead bodies, Chris Meyer, last question for Wade Holland.
Okay, thanks. Hey, Wade, it was just brought to my attention that the New Hampshire Avenue safety study only went down to Southampton Drive, but did not extend to Piney Branch. Is that accurate, that there's no is the safety study stop at Southampton? Because that intersection there with Piney Branch, there's only a sidewalk on the southbound side of the road. And if you're trying to cross Piney Branch at that intersection, I've tried it, you only have 10 feet of visibility to the cars, which are flying down at the speed limit is 45, but they're going 55, 60. Is there anything being done at that intersection? It's just very dangerous.
Yeah, initially we were going to limit it to Southampton Drive, just because we had to put in basically two things for budget. They said, what's your ideal length, and then what's it for budget. So we basically have split the project in two, so we at least can do a study all the way down to Piney Branch. So our consultants will be going from Piney Branch Road to the Beltway.
Okay, great. So it does include, is that the same study? The New Hampshire Avenue safety study? Or is it a different one that you're talking about?
Yeah, so there's one study. So initially when we submitted the project in two phases, we said, well, if we only have money for X for the grant, we just do the Montgomery County side. But we were able to make some adjustments based on when we got the grant and what we could do to split it up to make it a little bit longer of a corridor to make sure we could do 495 all the way down to Piney Branch. So that's going to be one corridor study from 495 to Piney Branch.
Okay. All right,
Yeah.
thanks. Is there any way to help or follow that? Because I feel like, most of the users of that are going to be a pretty low income area. That's the people that I pass mostly in that stretch. I don't know. I just feel like that area gets a lot of neglect.
Yeah, so part of what the scope of work for the contractors will be to do some outreach. At minimum, they'll be doing a public meeting with folks. But in terms of how to get outreach out there, yeah, we want to make sure we have all trying to find listservs, posting stuff at bus stops because it's pretty high transit use along that route. Flyers, just those kind of things to get more people involved and get information out. So like I said, we haven't gotten the contractor online yet, so we haven't started any of this or the outreach yet. Okay. But that's part of it.
Yeah, just as an indication, the street crossing, not there, but a little bit up the street on Piney Branch, when you press the button, it literally says, warning, cars will not stop. So it doesn't say yellow lights are flashing. It says, warning, cars will not stop. It's this is great. This is a very accurate statement on the crosswalk. But I think it's indicative of the nature in that area.
Well,
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll make sure we get the Civic Federation. So we give it to Alan and when this project gets underway, make sure everyone on the call is aware of when that project starts.
This is Jerry Garson. I want to ask Wade two simple questions. The first one is, can you share your information with us and send it to us so that we can post it online? The initial slides show.
Yep. The slides, I sent them to Alan earlier tonight,
okay.
So he'll have them.
We'll
so
post
maybe we'll get those on the website.
We'll then post it online. And the second thing is, I've been out to Los Angeles a number of times and amazed at how all the traffic always yields to pedestrians and crosswalks. Do you have any idea of how many tickets have been given for not yielding to pedestrians in Montgomery County. It seems the only thing the police officers are interested in is speed, but yet more pedestrians, I think, are actually killed or injured while crossing with the light, but people don't yield to them while they're crossing the street.
I think the first person I've ever heard to say LA drivers are yielding to pedestrians. So maybe it's gotten better in LA, but yeah. So normally, I don't know off the top of my head know the number of citations or warnings that are given for drivers. We are in the middle of our Street Smart campaign, so we've started kicking off last week doing some drivers not yielding to ped campaigns. We were first down in Bethesda and Friendship Heights last week with officers handing out citations and warnings in that area. Then we'll be moving around the county throughout November, doing those high visibility campaigns. I will say speeding citations are pedestrian safety work, because if we can get less people speeding, God forbid if there is a crash, if they're not driving way over the speed limit, that's less likely to end up in a serious or fatal injury. So, for us, we would definitely see speeding enforcement, making sure people are driving safe speeds as a important part of our pedestrian safety enforcement.
I'd like to thank Wayne Holland for doing an excellent job, and I want to thank Chris Conklin for doing an excellent job on their presentation. And I will now say we will resume the regular part of our meeting. Thank you very much for participating.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much, Wade. You were with us 8 months ago in our March meeting. This is a high priority issue for the Civic Federation. We learned so much when you participated. Thank you to Chris Conklin, who's doing a great job at the Department of Transportation. We can conclude our meeting soon if we just want to quickly go through our list of committees to see if anybody has anything they'd like to report for the good of the order. Anybody have any information they want to share about education? Okay, moving on. We'll get to you, Peggy, when we get to legislation. What about the environment? Does anybody share something on the environment?
This is Jerry. One of the things which I think is actually part of the Department of Transportation is really a question. The discussion in Thrive 2050 about all the additional stormwater and all the additional sanitary sewers that are going to be needed for the additional 200,000 people. Will this be addressed in Thrive 2050?
Who are you posing
It's
that?
a question really of Chris Conklin. I think he's responsible for all these sewers that are put into the streets.
Chris, you still there?
I think we lost him.
No, he's no longer on the meeting.
I think he probably went to watch the Steelers game. Just guessing. Anybody have anything else to share on the environment? Land use and planning. These are our alphabetical list. There's a lot of activity around Thrive and the attainable housing work that the County Council and the Planning Board are doing. I want to just recognize the work that Prasad and Carrie Lamari have been doing on our behalf, collecting valuable information around the country, which highlights some of the issues about upzoning and the unintended consequences. We had a lot of very positive feedback from our October meeting and our guest speaker, Alyssa Pierre. And I want to especially recognize our new Vice President, Elizabeth Joyce, for the wonderful advocacy that she's been doing for not only the Civic Federation, but for other groups and communities around the county. So thank you, Elizabeth. Do you want to say anything, Elizabeth?
I want to thank you, Ellen, for the Civic Federation signing on to the Taxpayers League letter to the council, which in true transparency I wrote. But it's really I think it's a resource because it puts all the information together in one place. And speaking of the environment, unfortunately today the Sierra Club came out and Maryland Matters with an editorial supporting Thrive. And we actually have a number of environmental organizations which are very well informed that are opposed to Thrive. But there seem to be a number of nonprofits in the county that simply fall into line with the Coalition for Smarter Growth, and because they've been associated with them, and they're not taking into account all the new information that we have about, in this case, the environment, how damaging Thrive would be. And I just think we just have to keep up to speed on this, because this is a huge critical issue, and there's nothing really more important, I don't think, that's going on right now. And they're trying to rush it through. Fortunately, people with great questions have slowed it down, but we just have to keep paying attention, because there's no evidence on their side that it's going to do what they say it's going to do. So we just need to keep on paying attention and let all of our groups know that this is a huge issue that affects all of us, and that it won't do what it's supposed to do.
Thanks, Liz. We do have good coalition partners out there, the Taxpayers League, the Stormwater Partners Network, and the Thrive 2050 Neighborhood Coalition. Everybody's,
Yes.
The Citizens Coordinating Committee for Friendship Heights. Everybody's doing good work, and hopefully it's having effect. Just on Thrive, came to our attention earlier this week that there are significant differences between the general plan that was promulgated in Prince George's County compared to the draft that's before the Montgomery County Council. For some reason, in a bi-county commission, the one from Prince George's County is much more detailed. It's got metrics, got lots of the things that we've been calling about as advocates. So I commend that to your attention. You want to look at the Prince George's general plan. It's on their website, and you can see how ours is shadow compared to theirs. Carrie, on this issue.
Thank you. Thank you for letting me talk here.
Peggy, after you, next.
Two things. First, about the lack of civility. In recent, I'd say weeks, but mostly days, there's been a lot of negativity and slander, borderline slanderous actions by certain appointed people. I'm not going to say who, but I think that we need to focus on that. And I'm going to ask people, if not the Federation, to request the council to at least talk to county employees and county government, and or especially at the planning department, and suggest that maybe they need to tone it down a little bit so that we can have civil public discussion. I think that's important. And, without us being able to facilitate that, then the conversation just dissolves and it degrades. And the second thing I want to talk about that's critical, this is absolutely critical, and that nobody's really focusing on, regardless of whether Thrive has some interesting words like a resilient environment. All of that is applied through what they call an action report. The action report is a separate document. It is not part of Thrive. It is submitted with Thrive, but because it entails the cooperation of DEP, Department of Transportation, agencies on ethics, on equity, it doesn't get applied until it goes through studies and public hearings. And according to the Fed committee, it could be 7 years before a lot of these fundamental necessary laws are implemented to achieve the nice words that are in Thrive. Okay, they're on the heels of Thrive passing. They've got a zoning text amendment. if the zoning text amendment, goes forward as anticipated, and we don't have an action report on the environment, on the transportation elements, on the other important aspects, we're heading for a disaster. I mean, that's just the reality, because you can have all the nice words you want to in a general plan, but if you don't have the follow-up legislation to enforce it, but you open up the county for basically 100% density, at least in all the suburban areas or more, there's not much we can do. We're looking at real problems. So 2 points. If people can request the council in letters or emails simply to tone it down, get the planning board staff and planning members to tone down the rhetoric so that we can have constructive discussions, communications. And secondly, request that if they're going to do anything, postpone any implementation of ZTAs until after we have a functional action report that won't create the havoc. That's all I got to say.
Thank you, Carrie. Legislation, Peggy, do you have something to say about the previous issues or about legislation?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I will be contacting our state delegates and senators to ask if they have any bills that they're thinking of putting forward that would be of particular interest to the Civic Federation. I'm also asking all of you to think of things that need to be brought up at the state level. And then Alan, you and I have to discuss a process for evaluating different bills before we can oppose or support them.
And we will do that. Thank you, Peggy. Anybody want to say anything about public finance?
Alan?
Yes, Harry.
Can I speak?
Sure.
Yeah, two things on planning and land use, one on sort of legislation. On planning and land use, you had mentioned looking at the neighboring master plans and our general plans and how they compare. I also want to mention that when DC recently updated their comprehensive plan, not even a complete rewrite like Thrive is, they took 5 years for public engagement, and they had many, many days of testimony. Secondly, I just wanted to clarify something that Carrie said about the negative comments coming from employees. I don't think you're going to see any of those as county employees. They are all within the planning department, which is really a bi-county agency. So I just want to clarify, I haven't seen any county directors or employees with that tone. The last thing I wanted to mention is about, unless this was already announced, the public hearing on the redistricting map. There will be 2 public hearings. Did anybody talk about that yet?
I mentioned it and the dates were put in the chat, but if you want to mention them again, that'd be great.
Okay, I'll just enter them in the chat. There's one in the afternoon and one in the evening.
Of what days?
One second.
It's in the chat someplace. So,
I didn't see it in the chat. Are you sure? November 16th at 1:30, November 18th at 7 p.m.
Yeah.
And I know that there are quite a few areas that are not happy about how things have been, how the boundaries have been drawn in some places. So.
Yeah, Nancy Mason put in the chat and she noted that both of those hearings are full at this point. So this might be.
So they need to add, they should add hearings because they're not even announcing it until tomorrow.
Right, and said that both of them are full. So thank you very much.
And I just want to point out that Four Corners, which is a very small area, is split into 3 different districts, which is not something they're not supposed to be splitting up neighborhoods that way. So
I agree. Thank you very much.
Divide and conquer, Harriet.
Can I say one more thing?
divide and conquer.
Okay,
Right.
Carrie, on what issue?
On the same thing Harriet was just talking about, the redistricting. What I've noticed, I mean, Dean Ahmad had a plan that actually, I thought, kept the political and civic engagement of communities together. But what I've seen in this plan, I think it's plan number 1, it divides up Travilla and North Potomac, and they have a historical relationship, you know, for political engagement and for civic engagement. It divides up Aspen Hill, Alney, and then Leisure World. It literally takes them into 3 different districts. And I think you can ask Joan, I believe there is political and civic engagement there, that they work together on a lot of issues. So to divide them up, I think is problematic. And I believe it's in several other districts. I mean, I heard somebody in Chevy Chase was saying they had some issues. I don't know. We shouldn't be breaking up civic communities in a redistricting. It doesn't make sense. And elections are politics. Civic activity rely on politics. I don't know. That's all I got to say.
We know, and there's lots of concern, and so there'll be very interesting hearings, and there should be more. We'll ask the council president if he can add one, so they don't make the same error that they did with the Thrive public hearing, where they limited not only the number of people who could present, but how long they could present. Anybody want to say?
Actually, I think a letter might be in order to send to them requesting more hearings.
Yes, we should do that.
Okay. Thank you.
Public safety. I think we would be remiss if we didn't note the stabbing that took place at Blair High School today. It's raised lots of concerns about student safety in a school which is just jam-packed. You know, number of people in Blair High School, you know, they outnumber some local municipalities. So it's raised the issues of whether or not school resource officers, you know, should have been removed from the schools. Not going to get into that now, but it is of concern. We've got some overcrowded schools, and some of them are not very safe. Anybody want to say anything about public safety? It undergirds a lot of what we're talking about. We've recently had meetings with the 3rd District Police Commander, Dave McBain, who is in Silver Spring, and he's got some concerns about the public safety, the security situation on our streets in Silver Spring. So something to keep an eye on. And last,
wait. On that note, Bruce Lee has been posting a great many police bulletins, you know, and he is really concerned about Silver Spring. It's just, I mean, and I've had some conversations with him. He's talked to police officers, the head people in the police department, and they're even concerned. I don't think they know what to do at this point. It's gotten that far out of hand, and they believe it's going to get worse. So I don't know, maybe somebody should send a letter on that to the council, raising the concern. Had a lot of talk last year about the police department, and look where it's at. Look where we've ended up. I don't know if there's a relationship or not, but it's problematic. If we don't have enough police in the street, something's got to happen.
it's a very serious issue, and we need to have a longer conversation about that, and we will. The last thing is transportation. Jerry, is there anything you wanted to add beyond what we've discussed this evening?
I'd like to just warn people, the deer are out in quantity. I saw one on my block on Halloween, just running around at night, and just be careful on as you're driving, try to use your high beams if you're in an area that isn't having heavy oncoming traffic. because the deer are just out. And thanks to Peggy, there are few less deer, but they've gotten bolder recently. And it's just, keep your eyes open. And we'll keep you posted on transportation. If it's okay, if we have some empty space, maybe we'll have Greg Slater address us on more transportation issues, because it seemed that we had about 50 people tonight participating. And I thank everyone for the fairly long session, but I think it was worthwhile.
Yeah, thank you for helping organize it, Jerry. Just in conclusion, Thanksgiving parade on November 20th. We'd like people to participate. Bailey Condry, if you want to drive, that would be a good thing. We're looking for people to fill spots on our nominations and awards committee. And just a reminder again that Thursday is Veterans Day and that there'll be observances throughout the county. And I was asking the people who live in the Wheaton, Silver Spring, Tacoma Park area to go to the observance at Wheaton Veterans Park at 11 o'clock on Thursday. Anybody else have anything that they would like to share with the group? This would be a good time to say, if anybody wants to write an article for the Civic Federation newsletter, they can do that. It's open to members of the community, our members, and our deadline is always the 26th of the month to try to get it together before the next newsletter. And thanks to Jackie Boko for the wonderful job that she does on that. If there's nothing else, entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second. All those in favor, I trust. Thank you, guys.
Aye.
Night.
Bye-bye.